Crafts, would you like your quote?
This is yours. I've been around here a long time. That's not mine.
You don't have to stick to it.
Standing up here.
Yeah, let's all get together, despite the
We'll be on your left.
for the first and last time.
I'm to the left of Secretary Bellows.
Do people want to take their mandates off for looks, or do you want to leave them?
Oh yeah, your badges.
Alerting it.
We're all gonna.
And then, short after we take questions, we'll have you sign a prettier copy of what I gave you yesterday. I put it on a nicer stationery, and I took the Secretary of State off the top, just the state of Maine. Yes, Senator Nangle, and then you, and then Senator Farron, and then Representative Perry, and then I'll.
Just wonder if I can put this here.
Absolutely.
Is that gonna be in anybody's way if I put that there?
I don't think so.
Can I hit record? You guys done?
Yes,
this way?
go for it. All right, we're done
Now spill the-
joking.
Now spill the beans.
Okay, great. Good morning, and thank you for coming out to this press conference organized on the fly. We are really glad to have you here with us. I'm Secretary of State Shauna Bellows, and I am incredibly honored to be with members of the Transportation Committee. One of the special things about the Transportation Committee is how well they work together across party lines to get things done. And one thing that concerns all of us today is making sure that Mainers are able to board their flights on time and fly wherever they want to fly, starting on May 7th when we have the deadline for the beginning of implementation of the Real ID. I'll say a bit more about the stats and what we've been doing at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, but I'd like to turn it over to our distinguished Chair of the Transportation Committee, Senator Tim Nangle of Windham.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. I know this was kind of a short notice thing, but I'm the Senate Chair of the Transportation Committee, and I'm really concerned about the ability for every Mainer to get on a flight and take a vacation on May 7th going forward. The DMV, or the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, has been working really hard to get everybody in as possible, working diligently, but you know, you see 4 of us gathered here today along with the Secretary of State, and we're really calling on the Transportation Security Administration and Department of Homeland Security to take a phased-in approach to the Real ID Act enforcement. This act has been put off as long as, what, 2002? It's been constantly postponed. I'm not saying that I disagree with it. I'm just saying that I think there was a lot of surprise that it was going to actually start. It's going to be a busy season for travel, and the main airports are going to be busy, and with this requirement, security lines could be longer. So we just urge the Department of Homeland Security and the Transportation Safety Administration to consider phasing in compliance, giving Mainers additional time to obtain their Real ID or passport, and let them fly. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Representative Lydia Crafts.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Lydia Crafts. I serve House District 46, and I'm also the House Chair of the Transportation Committee. I care a lot about making sure Mainers are able to travel when they need to get where they're going, whether it's for business, to visit loved ones, or that dream vacation many of us plan. The TSA has said that while passengers may be permitted to fly without the compliant ID, they would be required to go through a secondary screening at the airport. Anyone who's flown from any of the airports in Maine, we love them all, including the Portland Jetport, knows that the areas for security screenings is limited. It's especially when compared to larger urban airports. We're concerned about the anticipated volume of extra screenings and that may overwhelm TSA's capabilities, causing concerns for both safety and traveler convenience. That's why I thought it's important to join the call today on TSA to take a phased approach and issue warnings to Mainers rather than subjecting them to delays that may interrupt travel at Maine airports. It's important to all members of our Transportation Committee that we're able to help Mainers get where they're going, and this is one way we can do that. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Brad Farron.
Thank you, Representative Crafts. My name is Brad Farron, live in Norwich Walk, longtime member of the Transportation Committee, and I kind of relate this to the boy who cried wolf, right? Real ID's been around for about 20 years, and it's like, yes, it's going to go, no, it's not. Yes, it's going to go, no, it's not. And I think people got a little complacent. I think we have every intention to comply with Real ID. I just think it's a lot of Mainers, especially those in rural Maine, that have not either taken it seriously, thought that there was going to be another pause, and May 7th is coming right up on us, and we do not want to see individuals show up in Bangor or Portland or Augusta or any airport and be turned away after, listen, a lot of Mainers spend a whole year saving for their one vacation of the year and to be turned away. So all we're asking for TSA is to use a common sense approach and just take a pause and let us get caught up. I know the DMV and folks are doing their best getting the Real IDs out, and the Secretary of State's going to talk about those stats a little bit. We just need a little relief so that folks don't get left high and dry as they go on their vacations and even personal emergencies. So with that being said, just asking for that pause and some common sense approach to help our fellow citizens get through this transition piece, and turn it over to Representative Wayne Perry.
Yeah, thank you for being here. My name is Wayne Perry. I represent House District 140, which is Arundel, Dayton, and part of Lyman. This is my 7th term on the Transportation Committee, so I've been around here a lot for the Real ID, as Senator Farron said, coming and going, and yes and no, and I think even within the last couple of months, we thought it was going to get pushed off again. So when we got the drop-dead date, as the Secretary of State said several times, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles has just been inundated, and I think it was important for us to get together and with supporting the Secretary of State and my fellow leads on transportation to send the letter to TSA and hopefully, give people a mulligan. Now, I think most of the people that travel regularly have the documentation. I think it's the emergency trip or the vacation that was planned 6 months or a year ago, not thinking that they could still use their licenses and stuff. I also think it's important, and this is for Maine people, if you have a passport, you can use your passport to go. I think that's very important to get out to the people that you do not have to have a Real ID if you have a passport. So give those a little bit of time at the DMV that don't have either to be able to access the Department of Motor Vehicle and get their Real ID if they have a trip coming up. But I think it's really important for the TSA to do it, maybe not a pause, but a mulligan, I'll call it. And if somebody shows up this time, most of these people that don't have the documentation probably only travel once a year, or maybe don't usually travel at all. So I think if we can help those people, I think that would be hugely important. Thank you very much, Secretary of State.
Thank you, everyone. And at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, we've seen record-breaking customer traffic at our 13 branches over the last 6 weeks. We know Mainers are taking the Real ID seriously. We are, Representative Perry said it perfectly, reminding people if you have a passport, you're all set. Or if you have another federally recognized ID, perhaps a military ID or an EAD, there are multiple types of federally recognized IDs, and Real ID is one of them. At the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, we have gone from, in March, issuing 11,000 Real IDs to, in April, just over 18,000 Real IDs. We're issuing right now roughly 112 Real IDs per hour, all across our branches. But we know that as of April 1st, only 27% of Mainers had that Real ID, and we are concerned. Estimates from airport authorities indicated that only about half of those traveling had a Real ID or other federally compliant credential with them. Now, we know a lot more probably have their passport, they just don't think about it for domestic travel. So One of those messages is bring your passport with you because we're just a week away. And we are very concerned. We want Mainers to be able to get where they need to go, to be able to board those flights. And that's why we're proud to join in this letter with members of the Transportation Committee to call on TSA and the Department of Homeland Security to do a phased-in approach, meaning the law is the law. People will need a federally recognized credential, but they'll get that warning. I actually love that term, the mulligan. Get that warning, be able to go on their way, and then when they get back from their trip, make an appointment, make an online appointment at the Maine Bureau of Motor Vehicles so you can get in and get out and get that credential that you'll need. We're happy to take questions, and then we're going to all sign this letter, and we'll be sending it to TSA momentarily after that.
Sure. Does a process, a waiver process even exist for something like this? Are you aware of any other states getting it? Just trying to game out the possibility here. And if there isn't a formal process for this, why do you think the administration would give Maine an exception when we're sort of in their crosshairs right now?
We believe the administration should make this phased-in approach apply to all travelers all across the country. Our BMV staff and leadership were at an American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators conference last week. This was a hot topic at the conference. We know we're not the only state that is really challenged by record-breaking customers at our branches and people trying to play catch-up to get compliant with the Federal Real ID Act of 2005. Remember, just like Senator Farron said, this has been, the Real ID Act passed in 2005. For 20 years, they kept kicking the can down the road, and I think that led people not to necessarily get what they needed. And so we know there are other states as well that are really facing this, so we're recommending that the TSA and Department of Homeland Security apply a phased-in approach all across the country.
And is there like a group of states that's joined? Do you know of any other states that are doing the exact same thing in Maine?
I haven't been personally in touch with the other states. We know that the other states have joined those conversations with TSA and Homeland Security authorities to, behind the scenes, urge a phased-in approach. Today, Maine is taking a leadership role in keeping with our motto, Dirigo, to officially call on TSA in Maine to adopt that phased-in approach starting next week at Maine airports and allow Mainers to fly, let them make their flights on time, and then give them a warning and let them come make that online appointment from the airport and come back and get that real ID when they get back home.
So this would be for Maine residents. I mean, when you fly out somewhere and you go to Florida, and you're coming back and you don't have a real ID, then Florida would have to offer the same flexibility.
That's why we hope that the Department of Homeland Security and the TSA will apply it nationwide. I think that's really important.
Do you feel like the state could have pushed the real ID sooner? Seems like you've only started, I only heard stuff about the last 4 months, 5 months, maybe it should have been a year ago, that you could have been getting people out there.
At the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, we've been offering the real ID since 2019 every time someone goes to renew their license.
But there hasn't been any word from you, like, we need to do this, we need to do this. It's only been in the last 4 months or so, really. I mean, sure, there's been a thing here, a thing there, but do you think you could have done more?
So we certainly did a couple of press conferences. I know I did a press conference at the airport a year ago on May 7th, and a lot of you folks were there. We did some outreach at the airports. We did do publicity to try to publicize this deadline more than a year out. This isn't my first Real ID press conference. And here's the thing. People are human. People are leading busy lives. This Real ID requirement has been in place since 2005, and yet the federal government kept kicking that can down the road. And then suddenly, it's a drop-dead deadline instead of a phased-in approach. Give people an official warning. Say, the next time you fly, you're going to need that Real ID compliant credential or your passport or other federally recognized ID. But let them go on that trip, whether it's for business, whether it's just like Representative Kraft said, whatever that trip might be, let them go ahead on that trip and, have them make an appointment. We're here to serve them at the BMV and get them the credentialing they need. And we do think Mainers are making a very good faith effort. We see it in the lines at the BMV branches, but we only have so many staff. We can only issue so many credentials.
What does this phased-in approach look like? Is it like X% of people need to have a real ID by this date? And, what does it look like?
Our hope is that TSA and Homeland Security would issue people warnings. You need to get that real ID. And then if they come back a second time, in a couple months without it, then that perhaps would lead to those secondary screening procedures or the prohibition from flying. That's a simple, common sense way that they could implement this, is by giving everybody just like sometimes you get a warning when you're on the road and you're speeding, you're violating the traffic laws, you get that warning. We are hoping that the federal government would consider giving people warnings so that they could have the time they need to get that compliant credential.
And so would it be up to TSA and the federal government to track who's already gotten a warning? Like so-and-so
Our-
last week and got a warning.
Our hope is that the federal authorities would take this approach and phase in that compliance. Maybe a year from now, then there's the hard stop, but phase it in, give people warnings first.
Should we have been offering real IDs for a longer period of time? I know you said it's been since 2019, but wasn't this bill passed in 2005? This kind of goes to Dave's question as well. I know nationally as well, it's only been offered since 2019. Should we have started earlier?
Hindsight is 2020, and certainly Congress could have done more to resource the process and to address privacy and security concerns that states like Maine had in the very beginning more quickly. The fact is we have been offering it since 2019, and the federal government is well aware that we don't have universal real IDs all across the country, that many Americans are going to be harmed by a drop-dead date, and instead a phased-in approach is common sense. Anybody want to answer any of these questions too, or am I doing okay?
You're doing great.
If any of you want to join in, please, I don't want to speak for you. If any folks have any other thoughts on that. Yeah.
Do you expect other states to join in? I know you said Maine's kind of a leader in this. Do you expect other states to join?
So we're certainly sharing information about this initiative with other states, and we'll see what happens. Yeah.
How long does it take from when someone goes to a BMV to give all the paperwork and have their photo taken? How long does it take for them to actually get a real ID in the mail? Is it like 2 or 3 weeks?
It's 4 weeks traditionally.
4 weeks?
Yes.
A lot of what you're talking about is Maine travelers, with the summer right around the corner and tourism being so big. Are you concerned at all with people not wanting to travel here, maybe because of the longer lines or complicated airports, or just the law in general?
I think as a state that relies on tourism, air travel is really important to our state, and we're concerned about any American that runs into unnecessary trouble because of an arbitrary, hard deadline.
Are you guys planning on extending hours at the BMV or maybe opening on the weekends for people that maybe work during the week and can't get there to get that real ID before that deadline?
Our BMV employees are already working extraordinary overtime, and they've been doing so for weeks. So unfortunately, we just don't have the staffing to open on additional days because they have families too. That being said, we've redeployed other staff from across the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, from across the Department of Secretary of State to go and help in triage in the lines. I was there myself earlier this week in Augusta and last week in Lewiston, performing triage in the lines to help customers make sure that they have the documentation that they need. As you're doing your stories, it's really important for folks to recognize we have a checklist on our website to see what you need. This is a federal mandate. The federal Real ID is causing some real concerns for Mainers, especially, for example, like married women, because if you have a birth certificate and the name on the birth certificate doesn't match your name today, then we need to see that documentation, like a marriage license or other court records that show how your name has changed. So we're trying to run triage at the branches. Our staff has been working some extraordinary overtime. It's an all hands on deck moment, but we're a small state with a small number of branches, just 13 branches across the state, and the federal requirements are complex. That's why we're sending people to appointments, because if you have an appointment, you can get in and out in 10 minutes. If you're a walk-in, it depends on which branch and what time of day, but you might be looking at hours of wait time.
If you have a real ID from another
Yeah, go ahead.
No, we'll be available for questions afterwards. We just.
Yeah. Oh, you gotta get back. Okay, we gotta,
public
I'll
hearing.
go outside and answer other questions. Thank you. So we're gonna sign this letter. I'll be available in the hallway if you have follow-up questions and wanna do stand-ups. We gotta get those, hearings underway. Thank you.
Underneath?
Nope. We'll do it up top. Actually, I have a second copy. Hey, Jana, we have a second copy of the letter. Should be.
I don't know how to sign.
No worries. Oh, it's in my bag, maybe?